Marie, are you ready? Okay, let me introduce Marie Greene. She's one of our commissioners at the U.S. Arctic Research Commission, and she's going to talk to us on the perspective from an Alaskan native on the impacts of an ice diminishing Arctic. Marie?
Is this okay to bend? Ariga, good afternoon, everyone. Uvlul otak is good afternoon in my language. I want to thank the symposium coordinators for inviting me to be a part of the presentations. This is actually my first symposium attending, and I tell you, I've been sharing with the different people how much I've learned, and would love to have so many of you come to Alaska to a statewide gathering to share your knowledge to the Inuit of Alaska. Really interesting presentations, and I just appreciate it. Uvnga atiga kasangnaluk ipnijalmi. My name is Marie Greene. I was born and raised in Deering, Alaska, and I currently reside in Kotzebue on the northwest coast in the Arctic region. I have a master's degree in rural development and have spent most of my lifetime in the region, in the small community of Deering, until I had to leave with the pushing of my grandmother to get as much education as I can. And so I've been blessed to have gained a lot of knowledge and experience working and serving my people, and also the education that I was able to receive. For 20 years, I was blessed to work for Nana Regional Corporation as the president and CEO. And there are 13 Alaska Native corporations incorporated after the passage of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act in 1971. Serving as the president and CEO of NANA, which is a for-profit corporation, a billion-dollar corporation with social and cultural mission that benefits 14,300 Alaska Native shareholders with Inuit descent. I am here today as a presidentially appointed commissioner of the U.S. Arctic Research Commission to share my perspectives on the topic of an ice-diminishing Arctic on naval and maritime operations, and how those operations in turn impact those of us who live here. And at this time, before I go forward with my presentation, I also want to acknowledge the people that have helped me. First, I want to acknowledge John. He sent me an invitation, but some suggestions on what I could share with you. And at first, of course, when you're always invited to speak in public, you kind of hesitate and think, can I really do it? Then I thought, after reading his outline and suggestions, I thought this would be an opportunity for you that haven't come to the Arctic to get to know us better. And I also want to acknowledge Koluk. She works with Nana Regional Corporation, and she was able to help me with the outline and also the pictures that you're going to be seeing on this presentation. So it truly is an honor for me to be here. Before getting started, I would like to share with you some details. It's important for me to share with you the Inupiat philosophy. As Inupiat, we've come to learn throughout our childhood and working with our elders that the survival of our culture is really important. Our values, our traditions, retaining, teaching, and living our Inupiat way of life. We have 17 values in our culture. Go ahead, you can go on to, and there's my hometown. There they are. While some are unique, some are universal to all people of the world, and you can see them there. To Inupiaq, subsistence means the customary and traditional activities of harvesting, preparing, sharing, and consuming wild animals, fish, and plants through a socio-economic way of life that has endured for thousands of years. Subsistence activities constitute a way of being and relating to the world, and thus comprise an essential component of Alaska Native identities and cultural activities, including our spiritual identity. In the Nana region, it was determined in 1999. I think there should be a picture there. There it is. That over 60% of our daily caloric intake was from subsistence or country foods. To you, the term subsistence may imply the bare minimum to survive. Yet since the beginning, those of us who subsist on the land did more than just survive. We thrived. Even in Alaska's cold, frozen Arctic, there was generally plenty for those of us who did the work and gathered what the land and sea offered. Go ahead. Through thousands of years of living, surviving, and thriving in the Arctic, our people inherited traditional and indigenous knowledge from the generations that came before us. It was our body of knowledge that includes our understanding of the world around us. When our traditional ways of knowing and knowledge are connected with Western-based science, the result could generate knowledge that will help us all with management, regulations, and other decisions that impact the future of the Arctic, including its stakeholders. Okay. When it comes to subsistence, diminishing sea ice means shorter, less safe, greater distances to travel to find marine mammals, greater fluctuation in caribou populations and distributions. Greater distance also means increased costs for thousands for the hunters, gatherers to obtain traditional foods. This map is based on detailed observations reported in January 2016 by Inupiat hunters to anthropologist Henry Huntington, who used them to make this map, representing conditions between 2007 and 2016. Okay. The impacts of diminishing ice, and we've been hearing that all the last 2 days and this morning, in the Arctic leaves communities with few resources to address these sensitive issues at the local level. Kivalina is experiencing diminishing shore-fast ice and overall reduction in ice cover. When this happens and the winds whip up the waves across the long distances, the beach is pounded with waves causing erosion and flooding. When shore-fast ice and ice-covered water were present for longer periods of time, the waves were not hitting the community as hard. And believe me, this is when we'd always be so grateful when this would occur, because then we know the village wouldn't be as damaged from the high winds and the waves hitting the community. And you can see there how their beach, you know, they're completely surrounded there with water. The intensity of the storms in the fall and winter are increasing. The sea levels is also rising, which intensifies the problems of the waves and the thawing permafrost. However, this is just one challenge living in this community for the residents. According to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers report in 2014, the unofficial cost of a 1,200-foot-long riprap wall was $13.5 million, about $11,200 per linear foot. Though this project was completed, the community continues to be hammered by fall and winter storms, threatening the well-being of the residents. The erosion has left the community stranded with respect to meet their needs, such as water and sewer and other infrastructure. In the upper left is a photo of Kivalina before and during revetment construction in the summer of 2009. Okay. These are just two examples of the impacts that diminishing ice in the Arctic is having on the people of Northwest Alaska, which represents both challenges and opportunities. Though these challenges are faced daily in the communities in Kivalina, such as Kivalina, there is hope that derives from one of the central aspects of our culture, collaboration. Atochikun, it means together as one, and describes the importance of working together for the whole. As communities, we work hard to provide for each other. This was necessary for survival and continues to be necessary today in a more modern world. Collaboration is key of the Arctic, for the future of the Arctic. All of you who have interests in the Arctic are a part of our community. You impact us through your research and the regulations and the legislation developed that are informed by this research. We have a responsibility to each other and to the future generations of the Arctic to work together, whether it's through research, economic development, or infrastructure projects. Each stakeholder knows that survival in the Arctic is possible. However, survival for all stakeholders is only possible when we collaborate together. One of the greatest opportunities is for scientists, agencies, and governments to collaborate with those who hold Indigenous knowledge to understand the Arctic and the impacts that the diminishing ice is having on our people and the environment. There are a few examples of successful collaboration I will highlight that relate to subsistence, community sustainability, and economic development. Alex Whiting, with the native village of Kotzebue and Indigenous knowledge holders Willie and John Goodwin, have successfully combined Indigenous knowledge with Western science to demonstrate the detailed migration patterns of these seals and how they evolve seasonally and over longer timescales, in significant part due to the diminishing Arctic sea ice. The map in the lower left shows the migration patterns of 5 female ringed seals. You can see from this map and others how important the Arctic Ocean is to these seals, as well as how they overlap with maritime activities. Collaboration between regional entities, communities, technical experts, and agencies have been key to addressing the high cost of living in Northwest Alaska. Communities like Notak and those in the Upper Kobuk have experienced significant declines in river water levels, causing fuel and other supplies to be flown in by plane. Due to the increased cost of fuel facing the region in 2007, all the entities serving the region came together to host an energy strategic session. This led to the development of the first regional energy plan in the state of Alaska. This plan was developed utilizing Indigenous knowledge and technical experts that identified sites to test for renewable energy that could be used to reduce dependence on diesel for power generation. Today, wind turbines and solar power have been deployed in the communities. Efforts are continuing to establish microgrids and to access natural gas to reduce the cost of living in the region. Successful collaboration utilizing Indigenous knowledge is also important to economic development in the Arctic. Red Dog Mine is owned by NANA and operated by Teck, a Canadian mining company. Under NANA's agreement with Teck, the operations of the mine includes a subsistence committee. The committee is central to the operations of the mine when it comes to any environmental concerns, minimizing impacts to subsistence resources and activities, as well as providing guidance to the mine on how to engage with our communities. The collaboration has been key, especially in the shipping operations in the summer. The same fall storms that hit Kivalina can impact the shipping season from the port. Last year, Red Dog had its longest shipping season due to decreased ice, but had more delays than usual because of increased storms. Collaboration is essential for the future of the Arctic. When we combine our knowledge, it is possible to holistically and efficiently understand the changing Arctic and impacts the diminishing ice is having on the land, the water, the air, wildlife, and the people of the Arctic. This is a powerful combination when scientists and Indigenous knowledge holders work together. I know we, all of us, can adapt to these changes. Deku, thank you so much for your attention. And again, thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you, Marie. I believe there are some questions. Yes, microphone is coming to you.
Commissioner Greene, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure to hear your presentation. I recall that you attended a tribal roundtable that the White House held in advance of the last science ministerial meeting here in Washington, D.C. And I recall very vividly when every participant was able to share what their concerns were. And you mentioned Mr. Willie Goodwin from Kotzebue, who said to the folks at the White House, who said, "What can we do for you?" And he said, "Can you make it cold again?" And that was kind of a heartbreaking comment. And I know that the federal government can't make it cold again.
Right.
But what one or two things would you want from the federal government? What means most from you from the federal government relative to collaboration and support?
Thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. I think there are a couple of things. Real key is when we start the relationship, we need to take the time for you to get to know us, depending on where your focus areas will be, or you're going to come and visit. I think it's real critical that that's how we build a relationship, getting to know each other. Take that time. When I was in a leadership role, too many times we had real key people that we could be working with that are here in DC, could be in Seattle, and even in Anchorage. They would come in for the day. So after that, we started really encouraging, if you can, to come to the community and take the time to get to know us, like Willie Goodwin. He's so blessed with a lot of Inupiat knowledge that he can share, and was real grateful when he made that joke about making it cold again. And then the other thing is, it's real critical for whether it's research. I heard some presentations earlier yesterday and today about the plans of what may be built, and especially in the opening of the Arctic, infrastructure needs. I think in doing that, always keep in mind that the communities that are going to be impacted, even if you think they might be a distance away, take the time to inform them, consult with them, and learn from them. I think that's something that we have learned over the years. So thank you for that question.
There's another couple of online questions. In your opinion, what's the best approach that could be taken to helping coastal communities like Kivalina relocate?
For one thing, Kivalina has, for many years, especially with the leadership of the late Senator Stevens, had really rolled up their sleeves and looked at relocating. And this was like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. They worked very hard to work with the Army Corps of Engineers. Senator Stevens was very helpful in allowing us, this community, the tribal government, to receive the funds they needed for planning. They worked with the Northwest Arctic Borough to put that together. And then when they started focusing on 3 potential sites, the community was struggling with the actual location of where the village could be relocated. And over the years, that's been a struggle. They've now have new management in the community of Kivalina, and they're working very hard on focusing on what they need to be doing to be successful in relocating their community. Right now, their focus is seeking the funds. They are in design phase to have a road built, evacuation road up the river from their community should they have storms. At one point, they had to evacuate a number of years ago when I was still at NANA, and thank God for the Red Dog Mine. The Red Dog came with heavy equipment. Boats were made available by the community to relocate the community to the Red Dog Mine, including children, and we're not allowed to have children at the mine. And then the elders and younger children with the families some were flown to Kotzebue. But just from that experience we went through, this is how they started looking at an evacuation road. So Kivalina is on the roll. We're behind, I think, on Newtok. Seems like, they're more advanced in their relocation. And also there's other communities such as Shishmaref that you've seen photos of. They're busy working at their local level too.
Thanks. One final question online. What additional collaboration needs to be done to improve and protect subsistence, which is essential to Alaska Natives?
I'm sorry.
Any additional collaboration that may need to be done to improve and protect subsistence?
I think there's a lot more that, we've making a lot of steps, like the examples I shared with you in my presentation, and you've heard from others, some of the presentations that have been made. I would always get excited to feel grateful when I notice that they also not only include seeking the indigenous people to utilize the knowledge, but also the protection of our subsistence way of life. I think within the state of Alaska, there are different entities that are focusing on working with the local people in the different regions, the Inuit people of Alaska, on what more could be done to protect our subsistence way of life. There's the Alaska Federation of Natives. Of course, there's the State Fish and Game, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Those are the ones I know that work very closely in our region. And there are others, including researchers. And you can see that partnership that was built with the Kotzebue IRA tribal government. And of course, that always depends on what funds we can receive so that they can carry out their own strategic plans with the protection of our subsistence way of life. But the real key here is, I think, continuing to not only educate, but also what can we do to be helping so that our way of life can be protected.
Thank you, Marie.